Main event of the evening.
Hello and welcome to These Days Are Ours, a Happy Days podcast. I'm Peter.
And I'm Joe.
And today we are discussing the final episode of Happy Days to have aired after the finale for some reason, albeit long after the other ones, but we'll get to that later. Fonzie's Spots.
Okay, Peter, tell us what happens in Fonzie's Spots.
In the Cunningham living room, Howard and Donald Hedges are discussing a problem with the Leopard Lodge. Their members keep dying of old age.
You know, Donald, by my count, that's the 10th Leopard Lodge funeral this year.
Howard has been Grand Poobah for 5 years, and the only new member has been Potsy Weber. Though Howard points out that Donald keeps blackballing prospective recruits, Donald still thinks he would be a better leader than Howard. Marion brings out coffee, and Donald hits on her, although Marion doesn't seem to take it all that seriously.
You're a real gem, and if you ever want to get rid of that big palooka, just let me know.
Oh, Donald, you have to come to our next party, no matter what Howard says.
Fonzie and Joni arrive home as Donald leaves. Joni has a bad case of motorcycle hair after not wanting to wear a helmet and mess up her do.
Oh, Joni, I love what you've done with your hair.
Marion confides Howard's problem to them, and when Roger and Chachi come in, Fonzie comes up with a solution. Roger will join the Leopard Lodge.
A leopard?
That's right.
No, come on, they wouldn't take me.
This is going to be a lot easier than I thought.
When Howard comes downstairs, Fonzie tells Roger to give Howard the idea. Roger pitches the idea of a young community leader to attract new members to the lodge, and Howard understands this to mean that if Fonzie joins, they'll attract new members easily.
If you join, everybody will follow you.
Yeah, that's true, except that I don't deserve this honor. I mean, you're missing a genius.
Oh, but Fonzie, you could save my Grand Poobah ship.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
The next day, the Leopard Lodge meet to pledge new members, Fonzie, Chachi, and Roger. Roger is the only one happy to wear these spotless fezzes and tails.
Isn't this great, guys? Huh?
Fonz, we're grown men, and we're holding each other's tails.
Howard calls in the pledge master, Potsy Weber. He tells them to only speak when spoken to, and call him by his leopard name, Sabu. They begin with the brain teaser portion.
Cup Phillips, step forward.
Potsy asks Roger what's green and fuzzy and has 1,000 legs. When Roger says he doesn't know, Potsy says he doesn't either, but it's crawling on Roger's arm. Then he sprays Roger in the face with seltzer water. Chachi's next. What does he get when he crosses an elephant with an alligator? A suitcase that never forgets, says Chachi, getting it right to everyone's surprise. So instead of getting squirted, he gets a pie in the face. And then Potsy sprays him with water.
I got it right, now why'd you do that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let me clean it off.
Finally, it's Fonzie's turn. Fonzie has a question first. What happens when Potsy sprays him and gets his jacket all wet? Potsy declares they're running late, and it's time to move on to the next part. The trio are going to have their photo taken, except it's a trick camera that sprays water. Chachi and Roger have to hold the damp Fonzie back. A week later, Fonzie, Chachi, and Roger meet at Arnold's in their hats. Fonzie's wearing a chef's hat over his spotless fez.
Little loophole here in the bylaws.
Why didn't I think of that?
Tonight is the night they find out if they're lodge members or not. Roger and Chachi already underwent their supreme tests. Roger had to go to a Packer football game in ballet tights, and Chachi had to go to a truck stop and say nasty things about Johnny Cash. Potsy arrives, and Roger and Chachi stand. Potsy reminds Fonzie he's supposed to stand when a superior enters the room, and Fonzie says he will when one does. Potsy takes him into the office for a supreme test, and when they come out, Fonzie is in a white bunny suit.
I have an announcement to make. Bunny suits are now cool.
Howard arrives and manages to pacify Fonzie by saying this means a lot to him. Back to the lodge building, Fonzie, still in the bunny suit, is entertaining some children from the Pfister orphanage.
Do what Mr. Bunny does. Everybody stand up.
He even picks up a little girl who says she loves him and hops out with her. Howard announces that the benefit was a success, and as the no longer bunny-suited Fonzie returns, Howard calls Roger up for his leopard judgment.
One black marble will prevent you ever again from entering our sacred den.
All of the balls from the members are white, so he's in, and is given his new fez and the leopard name Simba. Chachi gets in too, and is dubbed Zimbu.
You know, I just had Towel's monogram with that name on him. Thank you.
When Fonzie is called up, he has something to say first. He used to think all of this was stupid, but he would do it all over again, because the lodge does care about the community and children and whatnot. Unfortunately for him, one of his balls is black, so he will not be joining the lodge. Everyone thinks Donald did it, and they all chase him out, except for Fonzie and Howard. Howard admits he blackballed Fonzie because he knew Fonzie didn't really want to be a leopard. Everything Fonzie likes about the leopards, he already does on his own. Everything else about them he hates, and Howard would have seen that sooner if he hadn't been preoccupied with staying Grand Poobah. Fonzie admits he put up with all of this for Howard's sake, and that he loves him.
Mr. C, I love you.
Howard reminisces about the first time he saw Fonzie. He thought, why would I want to know this person? He'd be a bad influence on my children. He was never more wrong. Howard is like Fonzie. It's hard for him to tell people how he feels. They head home together.
Can you do me a favor?
Sure, anything.
Drive me home. I hopped over here.
Back at Arnold's, Chachi and Roger are planning to throw pies in Totsy's face when he comes in. When they see that the person who entered isn't Potsy, it's Fonzie, they end up hitting each other in the face instead.
Good choice.
Thank you, Peter. That was Fonzie's Spots. It supposedly first aired on Monday, September 24th, 1984, but that night ABC was airing its heavily promoted family drama Call to Glory.
Every second counts for those who answer the call to glory. A major television event premiering tomorrow night at 8, 7 Central and Mountain.
Starring Craig T. Nelson as an Air Force pilot in the 1960s. Happy Days was not on the ABC schedule at all and had not been for months. I found records of this episode airing in England and Australia between January and April 1984. As far as I know, Fonzie's Spots did not air on American television until it hit syndication. That's where the date of September 24th may come from, but it has never been confirmed. This is a very mysterious episode of Happy Days, Peter. If you had tuned in to ABC on Monday, September 24th, 1984, and they had been showing the Craig T. Nelson family drama, would you have watched that instead?
As much as I like Craig T. Nelson, probably not.
Fonzie Spots was directed by Jerry Paris, and it was written by Bob Brunner and Ken Hecht. Ken hasn't had a script credit on Happy Days since The Not Making of a President, way back in season 2. His other sitcom credits include Full House, Three's Company, The Love Boat,
Different Strokes, Alice, Good Times, Maude, Webster, Sanford and Son, What's Happening, and many more.
He died of pancreatic cancer in 2022 at the age of 74. Bob Brunner was one of the main creative forces on Happy Days and was with the show as early as season 1. He worked as a writer and producer on the series for the entire run. After Happy Days, he worked on shows like Webster and Different Strokes, and he continued to collaborate with Gary Marshall on the movies The Other Sister and Exit to Eden. Bob died in 2012. As for guest stars this week, David Ketchum makes his third and final appearance as Leopard Lodge member Donald Hedges.
You know, you've been Grand Poobah for 5 years now, and the only new person you brought in is Potsy Weber.
Dave also played Colonel Binnicky in ROTC and Coach Polino in A Shot in the Dark. Dave had a long career as an actor and writer from the 1960s to the 1990s, often working for Gary Marshall. He even wrote 10 episodes of Happy Days. He's most famous for playing unlucky Agent 13 on Get Smart. As far as I know, Dave is still alive and is turning 96 this year. Peter, what did you think of the final appearance of Dave Ketchum as Donald Hedges?
I was so happy to see this awful, awful man return. Well, he's not as loud as I would say in his previous appearance, I guess because his son isn't here for him to play to, but you do get to see him trying to Starscream Howard, and you do get to see him semi-jokingly proposition Marion, which is creepy on the one hand, but, well, she doesn't seem to be creeped out by it at all. She just seems to think it's funny. At any rate, it is very fun to have him back. It is fun to see him get chased by a mob of grown men pretending to be leopards.
No, wait a minute. It wasn't me. I didn't. No, not
What do you think happened to Donald Hedges out in the parking lot of the Leopard Lodge?
Well, part of me wants to say that they tore him apart like real leopards would, but real leopards have claws and teeth, and these are men who are not in great shape, who have neither of those things, so I don't know.
The reason why the Leopard Lodge might be declining is that there are these obnoxious jerks like Donald Hedges in the group, and you wouldn't want to spend time with them socially, so why would you join the group?
And as Howard pointed out, Donald is the one who keeps blackballing prospective members. Honestly, guys, you dodge a bullet by getting blackballed by him.
We also have Penina Siegel as the little orphan girl at the Leopard Lodge.
I love you, Mr. Benny.
Penina worked as a child actress in films and TV during the 1980s and early 90s. You could have seen her on such shows as Private Benjamin, The Jeffersons, Remington Steele, Facts of Life, Blossom, and Parker Lewis Can't Lose. She also did some cartoon voice work. Her credits there include The Cabbage Patch Kids' First Christmas.
Friday at 8, 7 Central, they're coming to ABC. The Cabbage Patch Kids' First Christmas Special.
Popeye and Son and Oliver and Company. She is the younger sister of Pamela Adlon of King of the Hill and Better Things fame.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Peter, what did you think of Penina Siegel as our little orphan?
It's a very adorable scene. I'm not immune to the power of a cute little kid telling a man in a bunny suit that she loves him.
It's a nice little moment. As for songs this week, we really only get one song. It's One Fine Day by the Chiffons, which plays during the tag at Arnold's. We've been hearing that many, many, many times. I guess Happy Days recorded their own sound-alike version, and they wanted to get maximum usage out of it. As for cultural and historical references this week, this entire episode is about the diminishing membership of the Leopard Lodge.
What's happened to us, Donald? We used to be such a young and vital organization.
In America, fraternal organizations peaked in the late 1800s and early 1900s. They declined in popularity during the Great Depression and continued to lose members ever since. But there are still such organizations active today, including the Knights of Columbus, the Elks, the Shriners, and the Rotary Club. Peter, do you think that the fraternal organizations in America can make a comeback?
No, I don't. They are very much tied to a specific era in history. While men are always going to need places where they can hang out with their bros and be kind of obnoxious, I don't think that specific structure is going to make a comeback.
It's going to get even worse because I think people are becoming less and less social and more homebodies. I think that's what the research is showing, is that people are becoming less willing to go out and do stuff. Donald says that Howard has been Grand Poobah for 5 years. Howard first got that title in Burlesque, which aired in 1979. So it had been about 5 years since that episode.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Roger is seen wearing a very anachronistic cycling outfit, including spandex shorts and fingerless gloves.
Everyone was wearing fingerless gloves.
Spandex was invented by a chemist at DuPont in 1958 and was being worn by Olympic athletes as early as 1968, but shorts like these did not become fashionable until the 1980s. Peter, did you even notice Roger's bicycling outfit?
Yes, I did. It's amazing. It's yet another case of Happy Days forgetting when it's supposed to be taking place. I guess since they figure this episode isn't going to air in America anyway, might as well break reality more.
In this episode, the members of the Leopard Lodge have sacred names that vaguely suggest Africa and Central and Southeast Asia, perhaps because these are the natural habitat of the leopard. Potsy's name is Sabu.
And you'll address me by my leopard name, Sabu.
A reference to the Indian actor best known for starring in The Thief of Baghdad from 1940. Meanwhile, Roger is called Simba, a Swahili name meaning lion, so that's where they got that.
You must avenge my death, Kimba. I mean, Simba.
Howard seems to come up with Chachi's name, Zimbu, on the spot, so to speak.
Your sacred leopard name is Zimbu.
This is also of Swahili origin, though it's a surname. Peter, were sacred names part of the Leopard Lodge until this episode?
They were not, no. Maybe they were so secret that they didn't reveal them to outsiders until now.
Did you know that Simba meant lion?
Yes, I did. I remember learning it because people love to point out that Simba sounds very similar to Kimba, the protagonist of a 1960s anime by Osamu Tezuka, and a lot of people have claimed that the Lion King is ripping off Kimba the White Lion, but at least as far as names go, it's just a coincidence.
Roger says that the Leopards sent him to a Packer football game in ballet tights.
I almost got beat up waiting in line for a beer. You know, some guy actually offered to carry them to my seat.
Again, the Green Bay Packers were extremely successful in 1965 with a record of 10 wins, 3 losses, and 1 tie. They won the NFL championship that year, so Roger must have been a good luck omen. Should we have gotten a scene of Roger at the Packers game in ballet tights?
On the one hand, I wouldn't say no to seeing Ted McGinley in ballet tights, but on the other hand, he mentions almost getting beaten up at the game, and I feel like that would have been maybe more upsetting than Happy Days would have been ready to reckon with, although I also would have liked to have seen the guy who tried to take him to his seat.
Meanwhile, Chachi had to go to a truck stop and say nasty things about Johnny Cash.
I had to go to a truck stop and say nasty things about Johnny Cash.
By 1965, Johnny Cash was already well established as one of America's most popular singer-songwriters. He first hit the country charts in 1955, and he had his first pop hit, I Walk the Line, the very next year. Would you have been willing on a dare to go into a truck stop and start saying nasty things about Johnny Cash?
What kind of nasty are we talking here? Do we just mean like mean things or sexually explicit things or just gross things?
I don't know. Wow, there's a lot of possibilities there. And how do they know that you did it? You could just say that you did. There's a bunch of truck stops and they're kind of out in the middle of nothing. So
that's a very good point. You didn't have to actually do it, Chachi. You could have just lied.
We get another reference to the Pfister Orphanage.
Well, I'm sure we all agree that this year's party for the children at the Pfister Orphanage was the best ever, huh?
It was previously mentioned during White Christmas. In The Magic Show, the Leopards raised money for a different orphanage called Sunnyside. So what do you think happened, Peter? Why did they fall out with the Sunnyside orphanage?
Maybe they're the same orphanage and the Pfisters just did a hostile takeover of the orphanage.
The Pfisters buy up everything in this town. So yeah, it's very possible that they also took over the orphanage. Howard says the Leopards raised enough money to buy an X-ray machine for the children's hospital. I've done some comparison shopping, and such a machine will run about $50,000 in today's money. That's $5,000 to the characters on Happy Days. I thought $50,000 for an X-ray machine was pretty reasonable. If you're thinking of buying an X-ray machine, Peter, for your home, it's only $50,000.
I will keep that in mind.
The practice of voting via white balls and black balls is common in American fraternal organizations, especially in situations where a vote has to be unanimous. In fact, our word ballot comes from ballota, meaning small ball.
Language is weird and so is history.
When Howard announces,
"Someone has blackballed Cub Fonzarelli,"
that is very similar to a 1966 episode of The Andy Griffith Show called The Lodge, in which Goober Pyle blackballs Howard Sprague from joining the Mayberry Men's Lodge.
Black. Somebody's blackballed Howard Sprague.
And while we're talking about classic sitcoms, Fonzie's bunny suit humiliation is very similar to a Leave It to Beaver episode called Beaver the Bunny from 1962.
I haven't seen Beaver the Bunny. Is that anything like the similar scene in A Christmas Story?
It is almost exactly like A Christmas Story.
Immediately, my feet began to sweat as those two fluffy little bunnies with the blue button eyes stared sappily up at me.
Roger quotes a line from William Shakespeare's 1599 play Julius Caesar.
I will see thee in Philippi, Julius Caesar, Act 4, Scene 3.
He's correct that it comes from Act 4, Scene 3. The line is said by Caesar's ghost.
Hey, Caesar's ghost!
To Brutus, and means that Caesar will see Brutus in the afterlife after Brutus dies at the Battle of Philippi. The actual line is, "Thou shalt see me at Philippi." I was originally a little bit confused by that line because I thought Roger said, "I will see thee and fill a pie." Because they're about to have a pie fight. Like, oh, he's going to fill a pie with whipped cream or something? I was like, that's from Shakespeare? Why would Shakespeare write a pie fight? But it's not fill a pie. It's Philippi, a place. Did you know about that line?
No, but this has made me realize that I do need to revisit Julius Caesar.
Chachi then holds up a pie and says,
"Hit him with this, Soupy Sales."
Comedian Soupy Sales was a popular children's entertainer of the 1950s and 60s, and his sketches frequently ended with Soupy getting a pie in the face.
Who gave me the black eye? Yeah! Nobody gave it to me. I had to fight for it. I didn't have to fight for that.
Other observations this week, Marion Ross accidentally says Great Poobah rather than Grand Poobah.
Lloyd Baxter died, and now Howard is going to be removed as the Great Poobah.
Which I'm glad that they left in.
I think that's one of those things that works in and out of universe, because in universe you can justify it as saying, well, Marion is not as intensely invested in the Leopard Lodge as Howard is.
To Marion, Great Poobah, Grand Poobah, it's all the same. This episode, Peter, might be the funniest that Chachi has ever been on the show. I was very amused by his boredom and irritation at the leopards.
I think this is Chachi at his best, because he is miserable, he's being a sarcastic asshole, but it's understandable.
My favorite part was when Fonzie gets blackballed and Chachi says something like, "I'll give you $5 for it."
Somebody put a black marble in there for me?
Who cares? I'll give you $5 for it.
Fonzie's line, "You want to lower my rent?" is proof that this episode is being shown way out of order. But during the tag, we finally learn the source of that shot of Chachi and Roger throwing pies at each other. We have been seeing that all season in the opening credits, which in turn suggests that Fonzie's Spots was filmed quite a while ago. How did they have that footage way back in September of 1983?
Yeah. I'm glad that we finally know where it is. I don't know if it necessarily lives up to my expectations, but I'm never going to say no to a pie getting thrown into someone's face.
Especially Scott Baio's face. So, Peter, were there any outstanding Happy Days fashions in Fonzie's Spots?
I was very amused by the suits that Roger and Chachi were wearing, in addition to the leopard tails and their spotless fezzes. Those were very funny to me.
Peter, did you have any other observations you wanted to make about Fonzie's Spots?
So the guy at the Packers game was definitely hitting on Roger, right?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
So there is that subtext in the episode. Oh man, imagine if Roger had gone along with it and we'd learned something new about Roger.
And it would have been in the episode that nobody really knows when it got aired in America.
Yes. So, Peter, I will ask that age-old timeless question. Was this episode any good?
This episode feels like it doesn't really matter. Even if it does have Fonzie and Howard reaffirming their familial love for each other, I don't think it really adds anything that we didn't get from any other episode. But it did have some fun moments. So there's that.
In a lot of ways, this episode is yet another one of Happy Days' hazing or initiation episodes, like when they were trying to get into gangs in high school or when they were trying to get into fraternities in college, and now they're trying to get into a fraternal organization as adults. So it feels like it's part of that tradition on Happy Days. And yet, at the very end, there's this major emotional breakthrough between Fonzie and Howard. At the end of a very silly episode, we suddenly get a moment that is supposed to be emotionally significant. How serious are we supposed to take that? What did you think of Howard not saying I love you back to Fonzie?
Well, Howard himself says that he's not great at telling people how he feels. So I think that's his way of saying that he feels the same way, even if he's not going to outright say it.
I would say that this episode is very entertaining, and then suddenly it turns sentimental. There's a lot in this episode, and I would definitely say people should see it. This is not one I think people should skip. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a pretty good one. I'm surprised that it's the one that ended up getting buried.
I don't know why ABC didn't like this one. I can't find any records of it ever airing on ABC, so I guess the network was not sure about this one. So, Peter, how can people keep up with us and find out about all the wonderful things we are doing?
Listeners can follow me on Blue Sky at petervolfrank.bsky.social.
They can follow me on Blue Sky at joeblevins.bsky.social. They can find this podcast online at thesedaysaroours.libsyn.com, and they can email us with questions, comments, and concerns at thesedaysaroourspodcast@gmail.com. So, Peter, I hate to ask, but what do we have on the docket for next week?
Next week, we are discussing, chronologically, the final two-parter of Happy Days. People will live, people will get married, people will adopt kids. It is Passages.
I have a week to get ready for this, Peter. I suppose I've had 5 years to get ready for this, but it feels like it's all coming at once. But I will be ready in a week to talk about Passages. So see you later, alligator.
In a while, crocodile.
Kimber, 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 Kimber. Who lives down in deepest, darkest Africa? Who's the one who brought the jungle fame? Who's the king of animals in Africa? Kimber the white lion is his name. When we get in trouble and we're in a fight, who's the one who just won't turn and run?